Something really exciting just came in the mail, and I'm going to be doing a reading vlog dedicated solely to this project. Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is going to be a reading vlog all about a project that I've been in the background of for the last couple of years. It is finally coming to fruition, and that is Together is a Distant Star. This is an anthology all about belonging, written by these wonderful, wonderful authors. So I'm not a contributing author to this, but I have been in the background, sort of just watching this whole process unfold, and it's been absolutely delightful. It's really starting to come together, and this is the proof copy, which I need to go through and read just to make sure it all looks okay before you can order it into your hot little hands. So I am stoked. The beautiful artwork for this is done by C.B. Lansdell, and it is just gorgeous. It has a beautiful color palette of pinks, oranges, yellows. It's just fantastic. My favorite little detail is this little skull down here. Each of these elements represents something in the stories that you'll find on the inside. It's an absolutely beautiful book. And I go ahead and open it up. We can see we've got pages dedicated to each story with the author's notes, a little bit about them, and then we jump into their tale. It's a real mix of like dark and light stories in here, all about the concept of belonging, and I cannot wait to dive in. G'day team, I've read the first story of Together is a Distant Star called Tiv Kadan by AJ Calvin, and it was absolutely delightful. It is a story which is based on a scene that we see in Wraith and Revolution, which is another book by this author, and it's very, very cozy feeling. So with the theme of belonging, we see two characters. I don't want to give anything away because the characters are in Wraith and Revolution. If you haven't read that already, it's not going to spoil anything. It's just like an extension of a scene that is in that particular book. And we start off really like just cozy and wholesome with a meeting between two people and that feeling and those butterflies that you get when you first meet someone new and you have an instant connection. So I read that. It was one of the shorter stories that we have in the anthology, but it sets it up super nicely, and I'm looking forward to continuing on. Hello, it is the same night, and I've finished Story 2 by C.B. Lansdell, and this is Flight of the Guildmaster, it was called. And it's a little bit darker in tone, but it's still quite hopeful, which is really nice. Again, this whole story, so all 12 stories, have to do with the theme of belonging. And this one was following a character called Gil, who is a resin crafter, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, who is like, it seems like it's quite dark work to do with people's bodies and sort of wanting to break free from that, and an opportunity sort of presents itself along the way, which they sort of go back and forth on whether they will take that opportunity, and they come across like an old colleague. And the story was very hopeful in tone, a little bit longer than the first story, and again, just like a wholesome sort of feeling towards the end of it. So I know there are darker stories in there, but we are starting off relatively gently with the two that I've read this evening. I'm looking forward to diving into more, but I will say C.B. Lansdell, I've not read any of her work before, but the story has ties to her other series, the duology, and it is one of the most fascinating worlds, and like the science behind it and the language in there, it's really, really intriguing to the point where, and this is why I love short story collections and like anthologies. I don't read a lot of them because I tell myself I don't gravitate towards them, but the reason that I generally enjoy them when I pick them up is that I get to a little taste of an author's writing, and like immediately just from that story I've gone, I need to go and buy C.B. Lansdell's other works because the writing style and the world building in there is so intriguing, and I just want to know more. So those are the stories that I've read tonight. I should pick up 2 more tomorrow. Good morning, team. It is the next day. I've just finished Story 3, which was Life of Gollum by Nancy Foster. This was a really interesting story because it was much darker in tone, and like the way, I'm not going to give anything away because it had like a twist at the end where we understood. So we're following a life of a golem, which is this creature of service who their only job is to like sweep dust and try and find these little crystal pieces. And if they find crystal pieces, they can go to a furnace and where those crystals get turned into medallions. And it's sort of like this whole circle of life kind of story with a twist at the end, which sort of tells you why the golems are the way that they are. And it was really interesting in terms of that theme of belonging, where the golem meets another golem who is acting in service and feels a certain way. They interact with humanity, and some of the things that humans do also make them feel certain ways. And we get like this range of emotions through this really short story of how those interactions make them feel, and where they do want to belong and they feel like they're valued in some capacity, or where they feel like they don't belong and they're just these creatures who are indebted to servitude. And it was really fascinating, and I really liked the twist at the end of that. It didn't go where I expected it to go, which is kind of, I guess, the beauty of a twisty-turny story. So yeah, that was story 3. I should finish the 4th story today as well, but I'm having a wonderful time with this anthology so far. Hello team, it is Sunday. I have a caramel iced coffee and I've just finished story 4, which was Vata Child, Vata or Vata? I think it's Vata. I'm sorry about the pronunciation, by Karen Lekebo. Again, I apologize about the pronunciation of the surname if that's incorrect. This has probably been my favorite story so far, and it is, which naturally, it is much darker in tone than the first few that we've had. It seems to be getting progressively darker, but again, that sense of belonging and almost this hopefulness because of the belonging aspect, even though it was a dark story, which was really a really fun contrast in this particular short story. So this one is about a young girl who is sacrificed to be a Vata child. So she's sacrificed to this sort of folkloric creature in the woods who has been said to eat these children. So I don't know how often they get thrown in. I think it's once a year, but she is basically sent into this pit to be the sacrifice for the year. And she's like, you know what? No. And she gets this like kinship with the other bones that she's finding within this pit, and they give her this sense of strength to overcome the devastation of that particular event happening. And then there was like a really fun and sort of dark twist as she comes to terms with being like this year's sacrifice. And I thought it was awesome. Definitely another one that made me go, okay, what else has this author written? Because I need to know. So yeah, I probably have some more from Karen in my future. But that was story 4. I had a great time with it. I'm going to go straight on to story 5 because I have a little bit of time right now. And I swear I will wear a different shirt in this vlog at some point. I just wear green all the time. That is neither here nor there. No one cares. But I'm going to go read story 5 right now. Okay, I finished story 5, which was Polaris by Elise and Steves. Again, I apologize if I pronounced any of that incorrectly. This was one of the meatier stories that we have. It's Valerie hanging out, my coffee. One of the meatier stories that we have in the anthology, and this was quite emotionally charged. So we are following the main character, Mal, or Mallory, who is essentially on a mission to stop the destruction of an entire planet. The person in charge of the destruction for the entire planet does happen to be her ex-girlfriend who she's been chasing for 15 years. So the emotions are quite high because there is definitely some unresolved tension and feelings there. So as you can imagine, there is a lot. There is a lot to unpack. This story deals with the concept of what if our concept of good versus evil wasn't necessarily what we thought it was, and very interesting to unpack that. So this one is one of the longer ones that we have. It's in this anthology. Again, super enjoyable, very meaty. There's a lot to sort of fall into here. I found that even though it is one of the longer stories, it went by in a breeze because I was so like glued to the page and wanting to know more about the dynamic between these two women. So had an excellent time. I am going to try and get one more story in today, but we'll see how. This vlog is going to double as a tour of all the places I can sit in my house because I feel like I've been everywhere talking about this short story collection. So I finished story number 6, so I'm about halfway now. I'm just under the halfway mark. And this was by C. Carvajal Levia. I don't know. I probably butchered that pronunciation. I'm so sorry. And this has been translated by Nancy Foster as well. And the story that was in here was called The Iron Queen. And this, again, was quite a meaty story where we are following it's sort of like a revenge tale. So the young woman that we're following lost her father in a war of some sorts against the Iron Queen, and she's seeking sort of revenge. She gets taken away and given a new arm because she loses her arm in that fight, and she's like training to be the one to undo this Iron Queen. And the thematic of this one is really sort of how far would we go to survive, and to what extremes would we will we face, or what would we do in order to survive, and also in order to avenge somebody that we have lost. Really fun twist in this one. I sort of picked it up about midway through of the story, and I did not care. I was here for it. Also, we've got some sapphic representation in this one. A few of these stories have some sapphic representation in there as well, which is a lot of fun. But again, I really appreciated just like a meaty story I could sink into, and once again has made me curious about the author's other works. So that is story 6. We're now at the halfway mark. I don't think I've mentioned this previously, but the way this book is set out is really interesting, and I've not seen an anthology set out this way before. So I'm just going to show you the next story that I've got on my radar, which I think is Natalie Kelder. Yes, Marauding Ways. So like each story has its own page in the artwork, again done by C.B. Lansdale, which is just fantastic. And then at the beginning of every story, you have got a little about the author and author's note section, which I've not seen in an anthology before, and I love it because I love those parts in a book where I get to see a little bit about why the author has told this particular story, or sometimes there's like research notes in there, or sometimes there's notes about the thematic that's been used, and each author has put their own spin on that author note because the stories are individual to them. So for some of these, they're like parts of other works, or they're like little individual stories that can be like that first one by A.J. Calvin, which was just an expansion of a scene in another book, and like getting that little Easter egg that can be read on its own, but if you've read that work or you're curious about that work, it's just like delightful. So I'm having a wonderful time with it, and I just really unique but appreciate the way that those are set out, and I'm having a great time. Sort of, it really helps me get into like the new mindset for that short story that we're going to read next. I find that sometimes in short story collections, particularly anthologies, if they don't do something like this where they break it up, some of the stories can blend into one, whereas the author's note and the like about the story or about the author section and the acknowledgement just serves as a really good quick palate cleanse to go, okay, I'm now reading a new voice. And I thought it was really interesting and like well done. That's something that they've done in here, and I didn't know that was going to be the case before I picked up the physical book. So yes, still having a wonderful time. I will check back in with you when I read story number 7. It is getting quite chilly here at the moment. I think it's just rainy. So winter in Perth is like rainy season, but nothing a little like cannibalism and escaping on sky pirate ships won't solve, which is exactly what happened in story 7, Together as a Distant Star. So this was Marauding Ways by Natalie Kelder. Let me just see if I've got that correct. Yes, Marauding Ways. And this is like a short story set in the same universe as her other series. And I've not read it, but it is high on my radar. Yeah, and like in sentence 2, like straight up cannibalism. But it is quite a desperate situation that this family is in. Like everyone is starving, so it's such a brutal world where it really is just do or die, and our main character is desperate, just desperate to get out of that situation, and to the point where she thinks that if these like scavengers, these marauders come to steal from them, she is better off taking a chance, getting onto one of those ships and becoming one of them than she is surviving in her day-to-day life. and it was brutal, but it had me so like just captivated immediately. And it's definitely like the stories are definitely getting like darker as we progress, but like I said a couple of stories ago, there is like this underlying feeling of hope, because the theme is all about belonging, right? So how do you belong when your circumstances are just so dire? And that story, Marauding Ways, really delved into that quite a lot. So I am over halfway through now. I do need to like jump into a beta read that I'm doing, but I want to keep reading this. I think the next few stories are a little bit shorter, so I might be able to knock a few of them, yes, I can speak. It's the end of the day. Knock a few of them out tomorrow. I'm hoping to finish this whole collection by the end of this week, so we'll see how we go. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying my time with this. I can already see like reread value as well, like going in and just getting a little more like tidbits of it. But yeah, anyway, I'll let you know when I've read the next story, or because they're a little bit shorter, maybe the next couple of stories, but I'll see.
Okay, it is so many days later, but it's been a week, but I finally finished the next story in Together is a Distant Star. This one was called Fire Burns the Night by Andrea Marie Johnson. That is their author name. And this one was quite dark as well, but again, like the theme is belonging, right? So we have that hope, and I know I've mentioned this a few times, but like the end of it was really hopeful, even though like the story matter was quite dark. In this one, we're following a young girl called Marilla, who is to be married off to someone who is quite untoward named Caius, and she's basically been belittled and told that she isn't going to be very powerful when she grows up, but she will be essentially like a fire mage. She's also too young to marry, and her mother is pushing for an underage marriage to this person named Caius, and she just like really, really doesn't want it. And we get the sense, and it was quite well written, and it, like gave me the heebie-jeebies, just how little the mother cared for her well-being in this story. And she just like was like, I don't really care, you are going to be married off to this person, I don't care how they're going to treat you, I think they're delightful. But we sort of see that that is not the case, and this is genuinely supported by other members of her family. She's like, wait, no, this is definitely not something that I want to be doing. Fortunately, there's somebody else in her life, a mentor named Gracie, who is like, hey, I kind of see what's happening here. Maybe we should do something about that. And I don't want to give too much more away because it's a short story, so things ensue from there. But this one, I definitely felt had really like changed the trajectory throughout the entire story. So we definitely start quite dark. We get some dark themes in there, and it's not like it's overly happy at the end, but it is definitely very, very hopeful, and I appreciated that. And I'm also very glad to be back reading Together as a Distant Star, because I would like to finish it this weekend and send off final thoughts to the authors.
Hello, I've just finished True Colors by Isabel Wagner. Yes, I got the surname correct. And this was like a I don't know, I felt things. I felt things in this one. And the reason being is that I am quite empathetic, and the characters in this story are able to like the two sisters. So it's Marika and Evelyn or Evelyn. And they have like emotion magic, and they're taught to suppress this emotional magic because you really shouldn't be seen to be being overly emotional or being in tune with other people's emotions. And the people of this world have been taught not to show outward emotion. And so we're following Evelyn, who has got this like empathic power. She can see sort of auras and gauge how people are feeling, and if anyone's being sort of untoward or like not super truthful in situations. And we sort of open up in this story with her saying that she is having difficulty with her sister's emotions, and the depression and the darkness that is surrounded by her sister. And then we sort of like have this family meeting where things come to fruition, and it's this like exploration of mental health and how people with really bad like depression can often exude it on others, and like it other people aren't empathetic or able to get on board with what that particular person needs. And Evelyn, who's sort of feeling a certain way about that situation. And so, again, I don't want to give too much away because it's a short story, right? But this one definitely sort of got me in the feels a little bit, just with that as someone who is quite empathetic to other people and can see other people's mental health struggles, but also as someone who has had to walk away from certain people when they didn't want to help themselves, and just my input wasn't helping at all, and then some of the guilt around that, and also like coming back to that person when you are able to give more of yourself. I don't know, it was quite a very deep story for a short story. So I got through 2 today, very happy with that. I have 3 more to go. Let's see if we can do that tomorrow. Hello, we're back here. I have read the next 2 stories in this, which means I've got 1 to go. So I read Deep Snow by Erica McCorkle, is the first one that I will chat about. And this is a really interesting sibling dynamic where the idea of belonging is sort of tied in with their upbringing in their town, but also just like each other. And it was a really like nice sibling dynamic. In this one now, I did beta read this one a while back as well. So reading the final product was really cool to see the differences. But this one deals a lot with sort of gender and identity, and sort of discovering oneself through that, which is quite interesting and something I always appreciate just with my own journey. And I think that, you know, people would learn something. So empathy for people who have gone on their own gender journey in this story. So I really enjoyed that one for the second time around. Some really interesting aspects in that story as well, like poltergeists in a way that I've never seen a poltergeist used before. And I think it sort of means something different in this world, but just sort of fun little bits in there. But this story is quite short, so I don't want to give too much away. And the one that I just finished is called This Is the Worst Timeline by Bronwyn O'Shea. I apologize about the pronunciation there if that was incorrect. And this one, it was really fun as well. So this is time jumpy, like timeline jumpy, with like similar characters or the same characters in between the timelines, and not quite Portal, but just jumping around timelines and having like this person from the future who's an amorphin. I probably pronounced that incorrectly, but like a creature who can shift their form between like this sort of alien-esque race and also humans, where she was brought up to be human and raised by humans, but she's part of this other race. And in various timelines, they're warring with each other, and in other timelines, there is peace amongst the land. But certain things have to happen in the timelines for that peace to be established in the timeline that she's in. So very early on, we learned that the main character jumps and she can't always control it, and that every 2 weeks or so she has to jump into a different timeline, and we see that happen. And then the timeline that she jumps into is one in the past where her current partner is a very different version of the person that he was, and she needs to sort of like try and pull him back to side, because it was like they did not like each other at all. They were on opposing sides. And that's where like This Is the Worst Timeline comes in, and I really liked that aspect of it. So this is a lot of fun. It means that I'm at the last story of this anthology, which I am going to try and read today, and that is Raisie's story, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, by Delilah Wan, and this is one of the longer ones as well. So my aim is to complete the anthology today and then finish off this vlog. Alright team, it is done. We finished Raisie's Glory by Delilah Wan, and that was a heavy story to finish on. Sorry, just like saw the disheveled lounge room. This was a story about a mother who is quite powerful, and she's essentially like just given birth, and she has to make some really, really hard choices. I quite like the magic in this one, so I think if you've read Petition and Supplicant, you'll get a little bit more out of it just with the way that the magic works. But no stress if you haven't, you can still sort of pick it up as you go into that story. So this has been an incredible journey for all 12 stories. I've enjoyed my time immensely, and this is releasing on May the 19th. So you can go ahead and pre-order this one and get your copy. It is beautiful. I'm very fortunate to have a copy, a physical one, for my shelves, and hopefully you will too soon. So look out for that one, but I had a good time with it, and I will catch you in the next video.